Okay, so welcome to this week's tarot reading, which I'll be doing with the Spacious Tarot. So I'd like to talk you through the spread, and this is inspired by a reading that I did for myself, a personal reading a few months ago, and the energies that came out of that, along with an invitation towards care in these times, because it feels like dark times, and perhaps it is. So, firstly, I'd like to share with you these two cards. I was asking myself this question, and I know I'm not the only person asking myself this question, and it just kept sort of coming round, and it was with all of the terrible things going on in the world, how can I continue to live my life as normal? And this question's kind of got the two prongs to it. So one is this kind of almost like a survivor's guilt, a how dare I carry on my life as normal from a place of safety when so many people are not. But the other part of this question is very practical. How can I live in integrity in these times? And so it's a question I've sort of been asking myself, perhaps forever in lots of different ways, but in with much more frequency in the last little while. And I did a reading, and two cards came up in this reading, which were very definitely very clearly for me. And also that straight away when I saw them, I thought, I need to share this. I need to share this with the community, because this reading is not just for me, it's for all of us. And this message is for all of us. So we have a reading about care, and about how do we proceed with care and balance our own sort of individual personal lives, and what is going on in the world. So I've got these two cards up on the whiteboard behind me, and I'll hold up the first position. So I chose two positions for this, and one was all of the outside things, everything that's going on in the world, and the other was, how can I live in integrity with this? And the card that came up for everything that's going on in the world was the Ten of Swords. So I've got this here in the Rider-Waite-Smith, which illustrates it quite nicely. So this is an image which shows a person lying face down on the ground, and they've got 10 swords in their back, sticking up out of their back. The sky is black and dark, with sort of grey and yellow clouds above, and then behind them is a body of water, and in the distance, some mountains. So for this to come up in this position of everything that's going on in the world wasn't surprising at all, and it was very affirmative that, we are living through times where we are betraying ourselves, betraying each other, betraying our planet. And this is very real. And, we may also be, with this being a 10, the 10 of Swords, we may well be at the end of some kind of cycle. We see things things have to change, something has got to give. And so we're at this point of the 10 of Swords. And this is one of those cards in the deck that can feel very, very scary. And so for this to come up in the position of what's happening in the world can also feel very, very scary. But it's also an acknowledgement that, what we experience and what we perceive to be going on is real. So it's interesting that this came up in this position that said, yes, things are genuinely bad in the world right now, and the way the the way we are behaving is outrageous. So that came up. But the other card that came for, how can I live with this, was the star. And this is the star from the Lightseers Tarot. And this is the deck I that I did this reading with originally for myself. And in this deck, what we've got for the star is you've got someone, she's sort of sat on the ground with a floaty dress, looking up to the sky. And in the sky is a very, very bright star, shining very brightly. And then the background and the sky are all this lovely sort of gentle purple, which is often associated with sort of energy, Reiki energy, and all these other stars. And there is a thread linking the human, the person on the ground, with that brightest shining star. And that thread is a cord, but it's also made of stars as well. And this was such a wonderful card to come up in this. It's a reminder that we are always, source and flow is always accessible to us. And sometimes when we can feel very stuck, because I don't know about anyone else, but when I look at the very, very big problems in the world, I do feel stuck, helpless, all these other things. The best thing that we can do is return to source, return to that connection. It's a major arcana card. It's a card of spirit. Just return to source. And this is a card of hope, and it's a card of faith, which may feel in conflict with this sort of 10 of swords that's going on over here, but actually is the only thing that will sort of get us through that. When I teach in the magician course, we go through the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and in that framework, the safety and security are sort of towards the bottom of a pyramid. So they're often sort of framed as the base that we need, that we must have before anything else. And then we have what's called self-actualization, which is where I'd put the star, which is where I'd put spiritual practice and flow and connection with source at the top. So in that framework, it's often described that, we can focus our energy, our attention, our time on self-actualization when we have all the other things in the pyramid. But when I teach it, I always point out that this is only a framework. It is only a description of reality as far as it is a useful description of reality for us. And that actually there are times when people use that which is at the top of that pyramid, that self-actualization, that spiritual connection, that faith, that hope, to get through times when they don't have anything else in the pyramid, when that safety or security is not there, or the sense of sort of love and belonging, all the different needs in that hierarchy. So the star offers us hope. It offers us connection to source, to spirit, and in practical terms, because the question for this reading was in practical terms, how can we continue to live our lives in integrity alongside all that is happening in the world? And the star says very, very practically, stay connected with source. Keep with the practices which connect with source, because when you are connected in with source, then you are shining that out, and you don't know, and this can sometimes feel confusing as well, that we don't know what impact we have on others in the world, but we have to trust that the impact is there and the impact is positive. And if we are centered, if we are grounded, if we are in connection with our practices, if we are in connection with our, if we're in connection with our spiritual practices, if we're in connection with source, if we are living from our values, all of these things, then actually just by doing that, we make the world a slightly softer place. And if we normalize that, if all of us are living from the star. So if all of us are able to connect, even if only sometimes, to source, if all of us are able to connect in some way to hope, if all of us are able to connect with this gentle energy just a bit, then together we do make the world a much softer place. And then all of the actions that because we may well need to take actions, all of those will flow with the star. We've always got flow. All of those actions will flow naturally from this place of living in integrity, from this place of being in flow, from this place of being connected with source. So those are the two cards that I wanted to share with you, just to set the scene for this reading, with everything that is going on in the world. How can we practice care? And so there will be 6 more cards that I'm going to read, going to pull for this reading. And they're really, really simply about care, about giving and receiving care. So, and giving and receiving, of course, we're not talking about transactional, I do this, you do that, but just about a natural state when we are in flow, when we are in connection with source, when we are in connection with the universe. We do naturally have this giving and receiving, and it's part of the energy of life moving through us. So firstly, should we say offering and receiving? So the first 2 cards are on a personal level, on an individual level. What can we be offering and what can we be receiving? The second 2 are on an immediate community level. So this is everybody from the people you're closest to everybody you know. Even if it's someone in your community that you barely speak to, but you know them, you know of them in some way. And so this is quite a broad definition of our communities, but I think it's important to bring in that interconnectedness here. And again, offering and receiving. And then the third pair of cards is about in our wider sense of community. So all the humans on the planet, all the beings on the planet herself. How can we approach care, and what can we be offering and receiving? So that's the 6 cards that I'll be pulling right now. So I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, as is comfortable for you. And just going inwards and perhaps connecting in with that connection with source that we all have, that you have inside you. So bringing to mind this star. And just allowing that connection, that flow with source to be, setting your intention to receive what you need. And the first position is on a personal level, on an individual level. What can you be offering? And so with the Spacious Tarot, I've also got the expansion pack, which takes us beyond the 78 tarot cards. I think there's another around 20, and this is one of them, and it's Pisces. It's a zodiac sign, and the image in this card is it's a very pale blue sky, so kind of wintry sky. And right in the center is this snowflake. So it's a 6-pointed symmetrical snowflake, very detailed design. And the sky has a kind of early morning quality to it. So Pisces is a water sign. And the water signs are about the heart, the water element is associated with the cups in the tarot. So the heart, the emotions, the sort of feeling. And in this card, that water has actually frozen. It's responded to the environment around it. It feels very appropriate here where I am in North Yorkshire at the moment, because it's been below 0 here for about a week. Everything is icy. Everything is coated in a film of ice. And so here we have in the position of what we individually, personally have to offer. It is showing up with full heart, and it is showing up with response to the environment. So in this case, the water is freezing. And of course, with the snowflake, one of the wonderful things about snowflakes is that they are all different, all individual. So what each of us has to offer at this time might be very different. We might all have different skills. We might all have different abilities. We might all have different passions, different things that move us, that really sort of motivate us. But also, when a lot of snowflakes fall together, you get a very thick blanket of snow. So even as we are looking at what we can offer individually, we can contribute to the world, contribute to our communities, smaller and larger communities. So it's an invitation to really show up as yourself. It has echoes of the star there. The star, of course, is an invitation to show up in authenticity in the way that you are. And so that's what this card is as well, an invitation to really show up as yourself from the heart, to allow yourself to respond to the environments that you're in, respond rather than react. So when we react, that can be can sometimes be very quick, can sometimes be very unconscious. Sometimes we'll be following patterns. But to respond, so there's an invitation there to a bit of mindfulness as well. So the message here in terms of offering is really show up as you are in yourself, in your authenticity, in your integrity, in your vulnerability, perhaps. And we'll go from there. So the next card then is receiving. What can you be receiving on a personal level, on an individual level? And this is another card with a fish in. It's the Child of Cups, which is the Page of Cups in this spacious tarot. So here we've got a pond. It's quite a peaceful pond. The water does have some sort of dark lines as if it's reflecting cloud, but it is a peaceful pond. There are not loads of ripples in it. And in above the pond, we've got blossoming, I believe it's a cherry tree, one of these lovely trees that blossom in the spring, so that we'll be seeing coming in the next few months. And on the pond are lily pads, and in the pond, so contained within the water of the pond, is a vessel, a cup like a sort of glass dish, and contained within the glass dish is a goldfish or a koi fish, and it looks like it's having a bath in that glass dish. And with the cups with water, I really love this image because there's something about water. It flows and it can be contained, and sometimes it needs to be contained. So this fish seems to be quite content. They're contained within this vessel, which is then contained within the vessel of the pond. So there's an element of safety there. So perhaps what we can be receiving and what we can give ourselves permission to have is safety. And then the Child of Cups or the Page of Cups is about all of the pages or the children in this deck are beginner's mind, so, or beginner's attitude. With the cups, of course, it's about the heart, the emotions, so beginnerness. And so this can be about inner child work. It can be about working with children, what we offer to children. Both our inner child and any children around us deserve to be safe, deserve to be protected, deserve to have that vessel of containment in which to exist, with the option, should they wish and when they're ready, to go out into that wider pond, which is still a contained intentional space. And so really, again, this is an invitation to to allow yourself to respond from the heart and allow yourself to explore your emotions in this position of receiving, allowing yourself that safe space, that contained space in which to really sit with whatever is happening for you emotionally. This isn't a traditional meaning, but in my career as a tarot reader, I've also learned that the cups can often be about hormonal things going on as well. So everybody has hormones, everybody has hormonal cycles, no matter what your sex, no matter what your time of life that you're in. Those hormonal cycles can be different. They can be anywhere from a few hours to, a month, whatever it is, but everybody has them. So being aware as well of how we respond to the changes that are going on all the time within our bodies hormonally, and how that affects what's going on in our heart, our emotions, all of which are valid. And so in terms of receiving, this really is an invitation to give yourself safe space to receive, at the same time to contain it. So if you have big emotions, they can be very powerful, they're absolutely valid, and they belong to you. They're for you to work with and process. And it's absolutely fine to seek help and support with that, or even just having somebody listen or know what's happening. And at the same time, you have a responsibility for your own emotions, not to let them be wildly unleashed upon the world, as sometimes we all do. So there is that invitation to containment there with that Child of Cups. In terms of our immediate communities, then, so this is everybody we know personally, whether it's people we know very well or people that we don't know so well. And in terms of what we can be offering to our immediate communities, we have the Three of Wands. So here we see it's a pathway through a dim or dark place. So I'm not sure if that's sort of just the end of twilight as things are getting dark, or if it might even be inside in a cave of some sort. And the pathway is lit by three wands. So the wands are like sort of staves at the side of the road. They look like wands of made of tree bark. So or sort of sticks from trees, branches from trees. They look like they might be. It's hard to tell the height because there's not a human in the picture to compare with, but perhaps the size of a human or sort of shoulder height. And the ones are lit up with their own fire, and they are lighting the way through this darkness. And so the Three of Wands traditionally, I always read about as being about looking to the future, deciding what you might like the future to look like, taking the shape of what resources you already have and pointing them in the direction of your future. And because there is a path in there, it is a path forwards. There is a way forwards, and the three wands illuminate that way forwards. In terms of what then we can offer to our immediate communities, it's a bit of optimism. There is a way forwards. Might not be an easy way. It might not be immediately clear the whole extent of the path. But we have a vague idea of what direction would be a good direction. And when we have that idea of what direction would be a good direction, we can offer that we can give that gift, that idea to our communities, to those that we know. So it's very different from this. We had this sort of Ten of Swords. Everything's a bit of a mess right now. I don't want it to be like this. We don't want it to be like this. We want it to be not like this. That's very different from the process of saying, well, actually, what we do want instead is this. And this Three of Wands is that, what do you want instead? So when something is challenging, for our immediate communities, this is the question we can offer. What do we want instead? What alternative is there? And when we're asking this question for ourselves, for our communities, like using it as a discussion, we may not know the answer, and perhaps certainly in a community context, it's almost best not to have one fixed answer, but instead to allow every single idea to come forward. So Wands is about creativity, passion, fire. So allowing all of those ideas to come forwards without necessarily without deciding, oh, that's not realistic because of this, or this is not realistic because of that. Start with everything that you want. How could things be in an ideal world? There'll be plenty of time to prune it later, but this week the invitation, as we go and interact in our communities, is to bring this attitude of turning things around. What do we want instead of the things that we don't want? And that anything is possible. And so just allowing that creative energy to be something that is with us as we move through our communities this week. What might we be receiving from our communities? Okay, one's jumped out. What is it? It's it's the Strength card reversed. I didn't know I had reversed cards in this deck, so it may have really wanted to come out reversed. So I'm holding out right just to describe it. And the Strength card in this deck is it's a desert landscape. So you've got sort of brown ground going off into the distance. There's a sort of hill, like darker hills in the background, cloudy sky above, and then in the foreground you can see some sort of some bushes, little bushes, and then right in the foreground you've got a cactus. I believe it's a prickly pear, and it's flowering. It's in flower. There's a yellow flower there and another bud which is just in the process of opening up. And so that's come out reversed for us. And in terms of what we can receive from our communities, firstly with reverse cards, the way I often read them is that the energy is there. It's just not quite lined up in some way. So that's how I would read this to start with, is that the energy of strength is there within our communities. And again, this is our immediate communities. So everyone that we know, there is strength there, and it's there for us to draw on. There's enough strength for everyone. But we may be working out this week, how do we unreverse that energy? How do we invite that energy in so that we actually have so that we can draw on strength? How do we convert the strength that exists in our communities into a reality, a resource that we can access? And so traditionally, strength is very much about it's another major arcana. It's a life lesson. It's a connection with the spiritual. Its pair card in the major arcana is the star, that is there with us. And it's about how we work with the bits that we don't like. So traditionally, you might see a human and a lion, and the humans tame the lion in this card. So, you don't tame a lion by wrestling with it. You can only tame a lion through working with your own inner strength and perhaps a bit of magic and perhaps a bit of luck. And sort of aligning. So in personal development, this will be about aligning those bits that don't that aren't working for us, with our purpose, so that we have integrity within our entire being. So to put this on a larger scale for our immediate communities, there will be some parts of our immediate communities that don't, either we may actively not get on with or dislike, or that we just don't get, that we don't feel a connection with in quite the way. And so this is an invitation to bring that energy from reverse to upright, to bring that strength energy, and to discover how can we work staying in our integrity. How can we work with those parts of our community that we don't necessarily find easy, but actually recognizing, honoring that we do belong to the same community, and how can we find the strengths within ourselves and the people around us so that we can be in that alignment. So it's a really interesting invitation here, and this is what we are asking for, and because it's in a position of receiving, there's something as well about the strengthening of community bonds, which intrinsically gives us strength, gives us power, each of us. And so, yeah, here we have this prickly pear flowering in these conditions that seem very, very hard, but it has evolved to live in those conditions, and that's what we can do in our communities. And then finally, this, our much, much wider community. So the earth and all beings on the earth, all of us. Firstly, what might we have to offer in this context? And this is interesting. So we have the Seven of Swords, and this Seven of Swords, there's a lot of space in this picture. There's a lot of space in the spacious tarot. That's the clues in the name. We have, it looks like ice. So a frozen body of water. The ice goes about 2/3 of the way up the card, and then you've got a very, very grey sky, and that grey is reflected in the ice. And standing upright in the ice, the seven swords. Six of them are on one side, then there's a gap, and then a seventh sword on the other side. And the six swords have a kind of, I'm not sure if it's a crack in the ice or a line that's been scored, but they're all straight. And that seventh separate sword has a crack or a line that's not straight. It's kind of different. It looks more natural. There's a sort of a wiggly shape to it, so it seems more natural. And this is a really interesting one to come up in this position of what can we offer to our big community, because the Seven of Swords is one of my favorite cards. It's one of the most controversial cards, or one of the most enigmatic cards. When I was creating the daily tarot meditation ritual set of meditations, when I finished and I went into my computer, I went into the folder to get all of the files, the Seven of Swords was gone. It was missing. It's things being unseen. So sometimes this is interpreted as meaning some kind of dishonesty. I don't like this interpretation for the card. Sometimes it's true. I don't think it's appropriate for this reading. I like to interpret it as being, firstly, like making sure that all the details are correct, because sometimes, something can slip by or, disappear completely if we haven't got our eye on things. So an invitation to pay attention. And also in terms of an approach to life that, we don't have to be justifying ourselves all the time to people outside of us. In this position of what we can offer, though, to our community of the planet we live on. Um, I wonder if this is about doing things differently. So the swords is about the mind, and its superpower is mindfulness. Its superpower is narratives, words, communication, um, frameworks, how we frame things, how we understand things, because we all know that how we understand reality creates how we experience reality. Because we've got this sword that's apart a little bit, it still obviously belongs with the other swords. In this picture, you've got things which are swords and things which are not swords, and this is a thing which is a sword. It's aligned horizontally with the other swords. It's just a little bit apart from them, and it's the mark it's making in the ice. Is not so straight. It does look more natural, like almost like a kind of crack, like a natural crack in the ice would run. Um, and I wonder if there is something about not getting caught up in mass narratives, whatever those narratives are. So, whether this is about um, fears, beliefs, narratives, the stories we tell ourselves, and that we're bombarded by narratives all day long in the world that we live in at the moment. It is actually quite hard work to create a space where you're not hearing or reading someone's story, often someone else's story about the nature of reality. And some of the narratives that we hear will make sense to us and we'll believe, and some of them will be obviously a load of crap as well. There's all of these around. But I think this card's inviting us to examine and or step away from. I think the stepping away from is even more important than the examination, all of them. So even the narratives that make sense to us and that we believe, can we just put it down for a minute and step into our own space? As well as the narratives that don't make sense to us and that we, feel that we need to have space from anyway. And I think this is a really, really powerful tool because part of what's going on in the world today, or a lot of what's going on in the world today, is that we're kind of having mass hallucinations about how society can function. So we're getting caught up in beliefs about what is and isn't possible, what is and isn't right, that are not necessarily true. So just carving that space away and creating that space and stepping away and being in mindfulness and perhaps deciding not to make a narrative of anything, or at least to be mindfully aware, consciously aware of the narratives that we each are involved in, that perhaps is the best thing we can offer to our planetary community. Because it's good for us as individuals. It is certainly good for the mental health. It is good for all of us if we can model to each other that we don't have to get caught up in these stories. We don't have to get caught up in these narratives. We don't have to let the reality created by these sort of mass narratives be the reality that we're living in and going to live in forever. This is a huge, huge gift that we can offer to the community of planets. And then finally, receiving. So receiving as part of this wider community in the planet. And we have the Hierophant. And so this is a major arcana card. In this deck, the Hierophant is a stone circle. So we can see three stone circles three standing stones in the foreground, another three behind them. So we're looking through the circle from outside. And behind them all, the sun is rising, casting the shadows of these standing stones towards us, and also the rays of the sun are coming towards us. The sky is a kind of pale blue, kind of wintry blue, and there's a crescent moon in the sky as well. Actually, looking at it, it's a waning crescent. So this is obviously a sacred place. And perhaps, that is, in terms of our planetary community, that is what we can receive, is the sacred. And it ties back to this star card, to that connection in with Source, that reminder that we are connected in with all that is. The teaching energies are all around us. We are connected with all that is. All that is us. And this is a gift, and that tapping into that, tapping into the cycles of nature. And remember, nature isn't something that's separate from us. We are part of nature. We behave unnaturally sometimes, but we are part of nature. The microcosms and the macrocosms in the world, in the universe, also belong to us, and we also belong to them. So we can find a sense of belonging in this greater community, understanding that we're connected with all the humans, and understanding that we're connected with all the beings, all the places, and the planet herself. That we're connected with the past and the future as well, with all times. This deep, deep sense of connection that cannot be described, it can only be experienced. It's there. It's there for us, and it's ready for us to shift into, if we only create that sacred space. And so we can create sacred space within ourselves, within our communities, all the time, all the time. When you decide that something is sacred, it becomes sacred. When you treat something as if it's sacred, it becomes sacred. And that's all we have to do. And when we remember, it's not new knowledge, is it? When we remember that our planet is sacred, all the beings on our planet are sacred, we are sacred as well. We have a tendency to exclude ourselves, either as individuals or as a human race, of thinking that we're somehow separate, but we're not. So if we just remember the sacred in everything, that's a blessing. And it's immensely powerful. And that's the invitation that we're getting this week. So I'll do a very quick summary of the reading and then open the space for any reflection or discussion. So we started with these two cards, the Ten of Swords and the Star, which represent all that is going on in the world and the challenges that brings, and then our own capacity to tap into Source, to find hope anyway, and that as a practical action as well. We then had what we can offer and what we can receive on an individual, on a personal level. So the offering was Pisces, showed a snowflake. It was about each of our contributions being unique, but also being part of a whole, and responding to the environment. And they're both sort of watery cards, because the receiving was the Child of Cups, or the Page of Cups, which is about being contained, being safe to explore what's in the heart, and sort of allowing that to be. In terms of our immediate communities, so all the people we're connected with directly, everyone we know, from our very, very close people to the not so close people. The offering was the Three of Wands. So a space to imagine something different. That question, what do you want instead, when we know that we don't want this? What do you want instead? And the receiving with strength, which came out reversed and which I've now placed upright in the reading, just to tweak that energy a little bit. And the knowing that as we strengthen our communities, as we create alignment in our communities, even when that is not necessarily intuitive to us, then that strength comes back to us as well. And then for our wide community, all the humans, all the non-human beings, the planet herself, the offering, the Seven of Swords. So a space to step away from the narratives, and the receiving, the Hierophant. So that reminder that everything is sacred. And that's our reading for this week. Thank you for joining me.